Reid is one of the best Magic the Gathering players of all time, and after I saw that he went 4-0 in a competitive modern tournament with Jund, I knew it would be perfect for a video. This deck is designed well, having access to a good amount of 1-ofs in a consistent shell. I like that instead of playing 4 Ragavan, we have 3 and a Dark Confidant for board stalls and when we can't connect. Not only that, but with 6 discard spells and 3 Liliana of the Veil, this deck can shred hands apart. As I rarely play Jund in Modern, I don't have many opinions on the way Reid has designed the deck, but what I do know is that copying it can't be a mistake. To start the first round, we're on the play and we have a decent opening hand. While we don't have any interaction, I think that Wrenn and 6 ping is good enough in the format, and I just don't really want to mulligan this hand. The opponent starts off with a Scalding Tarn, and I'm thinking that they're on blue-red Murktide, so I play the Wrenn and 6 hoping that they don't have a Spell Pierce because it's more likely that they have a Lightning Bolt for my Goyf or Dark Confidant. They do have the Spell Pierce, which is unfortunate, but what's nice is that that will pump our Goyf because a Planeswalker is now in the graveyard. The opponent then plays a Rogran Triumph and passes back the turn. This actually means they're not on blue-red Murktide, they're on Creativity, so wanting to put the clock on as fast as possible, I play a Tarmogoyf. Things aren't looking too good for us though when they hit their third land and they're setting up for a potential Indomitable Creativity next turn, so the best thing we can do is attack in with our Tarmogoyf and play 2 2-drops. They decide to slow down our combat step by exiling the Goyf with a Leyline Binding, and here we're just in a very weak spot. I decide to play the Kroxa and the Dark Confidant because I was feeling quite defeated that they'll have a Creativity next turn, but this was bad logic. I should have definitely just played the Goyf and the Dark Confidant instead. To my luck though, somehow the opponent just fetches a Black Source and plays a Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, setting us up for a very good turn. And that's what happens because we find a Liliana of the Veil off the top, so I slam that on the table and make them sacrifice the token. It's really fortunate that they fetched a Blood Crypt last turn because if they got a Dwarven Mine, they wouldn't have to sacrifice the 2-2. On the opponent's turn, they loot away 2 cards to the Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, Lightning Bolt my Liliana of the Veil, and pass back the turn. Finding a land and a Terminate for our draw step, the best thing we can do here is just attack the face. We don't have enough cards in the graveyard to escape out Kroxa, so we're just going to hope that we can cast this Terminate on their turn and do that next turn. The opponent has another Leyline Binding in our combat step to get another Tarmogoyf to prevent them from taking a lot of damage, but I'm feeling quite comfortable in this position because they don't have any artifacts in play that they can Creativity, they have to do it with a creature. And that's exactly what happens, they Creativity the flipped Fable that flipped on their turn, and we can just terminate that, and they lose the game. Going into boarding, I want Ashiok for its static ability, the Stonebrain to exile all the Archons, and Engineered Explosive to deal with all the tokens. I don't like Ragavan in this matchup because they can easily block it with the Dwarven Mine. Going into the next game, I don't have a very good hand on the draw, but I'm going to keep it because the Stonebrain is that powerful. Being able to exile all of the Archons out of their deck almost instantly wins the game because we are a better mid-range deck against them when they have no Creativity. The game starts off super slow because my hand is just fully leaning on the Stonebrain, so on turn 2 I've got to jam it and hope they don't have a Spell Pierce, and they don't, it just resolves. So now we've got to hope that they don't have a Leyline Binding to remove it so that next turn I can sacrifice it, naming Archon of Cruelty. Now things go completely south when they have Sacred Foundry and not Leyline Binding, but actually a Teferi Time Raveler to bounce my Stonebrain. And after they pass back, I'm put in a weird spot. We find a third land off the top, but there's no way that I can both kill the Teferi and have a removal spell for a Dwarven Mine token next turn. So I decide here that my winning line is to play Liliana of the Veil, plus it, make them discard a card, and hope that they don't have the Creativity. There isn't much value in trying to prevent the Teferi Time Raveler plus, and I think something like Stonebrain plus Lightning Bolt doesn't really have a high impact on this board. After discarding a card and passing back, it didn't matter in the end because they had the Creativity to get the Archon and were basically dead. Going into game 3, we're on the play and have to mulligan a clunky opening 7, and then we have to mulligan a 6 because it has no interaction. Our 5 is okay, but it's going to be an uphill battle. I bottom the Kroxa and a land, hoping to go Inquisition into Tarmogoyf into Liliana of the Veil and pray that it actually gets there. After seeing the opponent's hand, they have a Wrenn and 6, Prismari Command, and Indomitable Creativity. I just take the Creativity and we're gotta hope that they don't find another one. Things start off super slow with the opponent just hitting their first 2 land drops and letting us attack with the Tarmogoyf, but they actually Leyline Binding the Tarmogoyf on my end step and then follow up with the Wrenn and 6. However, after we whiff our third draw step for our third land, I decide to just concede because we are so far behind and won't be able to beat this draw. Now, going into the next round, we have a great opening hand with Tarmogoyf, 2 Liliana of the Veils, and a removal spell. I start the game off with the Triumph to set up for this Liliana on turn 3, and the opponent starts the game with the Soulscar Mage. What's nice here is that we find a Blood Crypt off the top, so we can bolt the Soulscar, play our land tapped, and set up for a Liliana of the Veil next turn without losing any life for up till turn 3. The opponent shows us that they're meta screwed by just Lava Spiking my face and passing back. Here, with a Fatal Push off the top, I play the Liliana of the Veil, and I'm going to plus. Here, I actually decide to discard the Boseiju instead of the second Liliana, and this is because they're most likely going to double bolt this Liliana of the Veil if they find a second land, or maybe they can play a Swift Sphere and bolt because they want this off the table, so I really want a second Liliana to follow up with if they can kill it. The opponent just Lava Spiked it in their turn, so we're going to instantly plus the Liliana again, this time getting rid of Maelstrom Pulse, and now we can play Tarmogoyf and have Fatal Push up. Surprisingly, they bolt the Liliana on my end step, so they could have killed it but decided to let it stay around. That's completely fine with me, and we have the second one to follow up with anyways. The opponent shows why they're splashing blue by casting an Expressive Iteration, playing a Steam Vents tapped, and passing back the turn. Again, with a land off the top, we can now play our Liliana, plus it, discard the extra land, and bash him with the Tarmogoyf. But before that can be done, the opponent concedes the game. Going into boarding, I suspect that they're going to be playing Underworld Breach, so we want some Graveyard Hate, the Engineered Explosives, and the other Sweeper. Going into game 2, we have a great opening hand, and the opponent starts off with a Swift Sphere bashing in for 1. Here we have the decision between using Inquisition of Kozilek and Lightning Bolt the Swift Sphere. I'm going to Inquisition the opponent because we have 2 Engineered Explosives, and hopefully it'll save us more life than killing the Swift Sphere here. Their hand is stacked, but I decide to take the Lava Spike because it's the purest form of damage in their hand, and we've just got to hope that they play the Soulscar Mage, and we can get this Engineered Explosive down before they deal us too much damage. I'm not sure, but the opponent must have identified that I have some sort of sweeper in my hand because they use all of their spells in their hand to only prowess the Monastery Swift Sphere to get in and play the other Soulscar Mage. Here being at 13 life, I'm way too low to just play the Engineered Explosives and pass back, so what I decide to do is both play the Engineered Explosives and kill one of the prowess creatures because we just can't afford to risk them having another explosive turn. And that's exactly what they do. They put us down to 1 life, we can't fetch anymore, they have a creature on the board, so I just concede the game. Wanting to have more matches in this video, I'm not going to show you a third game against Burn. We just managed to win because this time we had our Tarmogoyfs and our removal spells and they just couldn't overload us with spells and Burn. Again, I don't want to show you matchups against Burn. We got paired against Burn again, and we beat Burn again. This deck was very interesting. We won in the 3rd game, but in game 1, my opponent cycled Street Wraith. So I'm not sure what they were doing with Street Wraith in your deck. Let me know in the comment section down below what card synergizes with Street Wraith in Burn. Is this new tech? Okay, going into the next round, we've got 2 wins, 1 loss. Let's try and get another win under our belt. Our opening 7 is a bit awkward because we need a 3rd land off the top, and not only that, but our 3rd land needs to be both red or green. So I decide to mulligan this hand, and we get blessed with a very decent 6. After bottoming Unlicensed Turfs because it is only good in niche matchups, we Thoughtseize the opponent to see Street Wraith, Asmorano Condicular, and also Blazing Root Walla. Clearly, the pick is the Asmo because they can cast that by cycling the Street Wraith. After passing back, the opponent cycles their 2 Street Wraith, plays an Underworld Cookbook, and passes it back to me again. Here we're just going to slam the Tarmogoyf and hope that this can go the whole distance because I think they will struggle to remove it without an Asmo. On my end step, they discard Blazing Root Walla to the Cookbook, making a food and also putting the Root Walla into play from Madness. A pretty cool combo. I think it's safe to put the opponent on Hollow 1 when they cast a Flameblade Adept and pass back, which is good for us because we find a Tarmogoyf off the top. So here let's bash him with the Goyf, play another Goyf, and hope that they don't have a Burning Inquiry. Things don't look too good for the opponent though because they did mulligan down to 5 this game, and after they discard an Ox of Agonis and we play the Seasoned Pyromancer, they concede the game. What's actually brutal though is going into boarding, I have 11 sideboard cards to bring in to disrupt their deck. It's one of the most amount of sideboard cards I've brought in a while in Modern. Now going into game 2, we have a great opening hand because we can go turn 1 Bolt into turn 2 Ren into turn 3 Endurance or Seasoned Pyromancer to both disrupt and add to the board. Things are looking really good for us when they start off the game with a Flameblade Adept and follow up with a Blazing Root Walla. So now what we can do is Lightning Bolt the Flameblade Adept, follow up with a Ren and 6, and ping the Blazing Root Walla. Things already are looking terrible for the opponent. And things are even worse when they cast Burning Inquiry, and we actually discard 2 of the 3 cards that we drew, just swapping the Stomping Ground for the Bloodstained Mire. After pinging their Blazing Root Walla, playing our land and passing back, they follow up with a Magus of the Moon. At first I thought this would be a problem, but both having a second Ren and 6 we can double ping the Magus if we want, but I don't even think it's that big of a problem, so I decided to just fetch a basic Swamp and let it resolve, because it actually completely cuts them off black mana and doesn't really hurt mine. After following up with plussing our Ren and 6 and playing a Tarmogoyf, the opponent plays an Underworld Breach and we evoke the Endurance and they concede the game. Having both 3 wins and 1 loss going into the final round with Jund, I was feeling quite confident because this deck felt great. There was only one problem though. The opponent was on Murktide and they completely crushed me and there wasn't really anything I could do. So we managed to go 3-2 in this league. I'm going to open this chest at the end of the video for your gambling degenerates, and if you enjoyed this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe.